What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I'm Dave Smith. He is Robbie the Fire Bernstein. How you feeling today, brother?
I'm doing well, my friend. How about you?
Doing well. I cannot complain. I just got off with the great Tom Woods.
Ooh.
Just recorded another episode of his show. Should be out in a few days, talking all about the election and Trump. So that was interesting. And then tomorrow, right here, live at 1 p.m., I have Michael Malice returning to the podcast.
You got some good election coverage coming people's way.
We'll have some good coverage, and I'm very curious. I really haven't talked too much with Michael about his, feelings on the election over the last few weeks. So I'm very interested to get his take.
He had one of the funniest Rogan moments. Did you see that when they're talking about Kamala Harris with the ableist, and Rogan's like, "Why? Because she's retarded."
That was great. That was one of the best all-time Rogan moments right there. So, okay, so there's a few things that are on my mind that we could.
Is it that my special's coming out on Sunday at 8 p.m. on my channel, and that everyone should watch, and that I'll be at the Shell this weekend? I'm sure that's the top of your mind.
That was it. That was number one. That was actually all of it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Check out Rob's special. Yes, but that should be mentioned again. I know everybody's very excited about that, and I am as well. So anyway, so we'll talk about a few things that are on my mind. I will try to take some questions from the chat as well. Of course, if you want to get in on the chat, you got to sign up over at partoftheproblem.com. It also allows you to get all of our episodes live, ad-free, uncensored, and support the show that you love so much. Okay, so obviously the last episode, we talked a lot about Trump's big week and his kind of closing pitch to the American people, and how it's really going very good for Donald Trump, and everything seems to be breaking in his favor. I don't know if you're have I mentioned this before, this analogy, but like if you're a basketball fan, you kind of know it's always the most important thing is like who peaks in the postseason. So it's a long season in basketball. You play 82 games. It's a lot on your body, and you kind of, as you go through all of it. But what you want to be is like, if you're on a 10-game winning streak going into the playoffs, you're like, yes, that's what you want to do. You want to peak at the end because the goal is to win the championship. And Donald Trump just seems to be peaking as this election ends. Things look good for him. However, let's check in with the Kamala Harris campaign and see, because maybe they're peaking also going into the end. Rob, let's check in.
Okay, now I want each of you to shout your own name. Do that. Because it's about all of us. It's about all of us. And listen, I have fought my whole career to put the people first.
Holy shit, she's bad at this. Man, is she really bad at this. Who can ruin a moment where you have fans chanting your name? And they're all going crazy. She goes, no. Now I want everyone to chant their own name. And everyone at once just went like, what? Wait, what? We're just all supposed to start chanting our own name? Like, how would that even work? Just take me through this. Just the audio of it. Like, how would it work? And then you just hear a sea of everyone chanting their own name over each other. It's not going great. But that's just Kamala Harris at a rally. We all know where she thrives is in one-on-one interviews. So here is Kamala Harris sitting down for another interview the other day. I promise she's about to.
I feel like Kamala Harris right now.
But what he would do that is about eliminating or reducing the ability of corporations to be required to pay overtime pay.
So you could work and the corporations wouldn't have to pay you for
overtime.
Who worked for free?
That's right. And overtime means you are actually working a longer day, which means you are more tired,
Right.
which means it requires more exertion. That's why we have overtime pay. So you don't take advantage of workers. But what he would do that is about eliminating.
So there you go. Kamala Harris went on the Shannon Sharp podcast to explain overtime work. She doesn't really seem to get it. But she is very concerned that when Donald Trump is president, you will be working for no pay. Now, this might lead one to ask themselves a question like, who would do that? Why would you just work for no pay? But you don't let silly little things slow you down. You know, like don't let any of that stuff get in your way. This is just, I mean, she is, while Donald Trump is just like putting on the show of a lifetime, everything she touches is crashing and burning. Just saying. I'm not saying I know what's going to happen in the election. I do not. Because there's a lot of forces at play. But this is Kamala Harris, and this is, I gotta say, I really got to give the credit here to David Sachs, because I think he's the one who spotted this first, which is that he's like, she's entering the death spiral where he's surging, and so she's got to do something. She's got to do something, but all she can do is shoot herself in the foot. It's the only option at her disposal is to shoot herself again in the foot. And so she's just doing that over and over again. But you can't just do nothing. Oh, he's headlining the Garden. I got to go do something. But then the something you do is one of those two things that we just played you. This is it's a bad position to be in for the Kamala Harris campaign.
It's the energy of this feels like when someone brings a new person into the friend group, and at some point you realize, hey, this guy's a little awkward, and he keeps making things uncomfortable, and you don't help the situation by having the guy around more. So, for example, that first clip where everyone's so happy to be there, they finally got their seats, they still think Beyonce might be performing, and so they're out there and they're cheering Kamala, and she just turns it so awkward that all of them shut down and go, oh man, this lady kind of is uncomfortable. And the more you roll her out, just the more you can have moments like that.
Oh, dude, it's like, it's like if you're like out on a date with like a new chick that you're really into or something like that. Like you just started dating a girl and you're really into, you're like, oh, this girl is really hot, or she's really cool or whatever. And then she just like, you're like, find out she's the worst person, you know, like as you're out there, and you just have the moment like, oh. It's not just a moment of like, oh, it's like, oh, I have to give up this whole thing that I believed. Like, oh, it's all attached, so much emotion and investment attached to all of this. God, I mean, she's just really bad at this. And it's remarkable that people can rise to the top of politics while being so bad at this part of it, because this part of it isn't really what matters to anyone with power. What matters to people with power is that you'll do backroom deals that give them what they want. And so it's like, you just get these people who it's like, how the hell is Kamala Harris or, you know, Hillary Clinton or any of these, how did they make it to this level? I mean, again, this is like an old joke I used to have, but you know, being charming is part of it. Putting on a show, all of this is part of it. And this is something like the Democrats are just not putting Bill Clinton or Barack Obama up right now. They're putting these guys up. And all of them have just like, and look, I will say, because I'm about to get into this, I think also one of the things that's kind of becoming clear to me is that I think, and this one I am actually surprised by, not that I didn't know that Obama had some of these tendencies, but I'm really surprised by how much I think Barack Obama has hurt Kamala Harris in the election. That not only has he not helped her, but like his comments about black men being sexist really backfired, got a lot of people upset about it. And even though he can give a really nice speech at the DNC, it kind of doesn't really matter, because it's like, yeah, but we're not voting for that guy. And we're voting for her.
If anything, it's a little bit like if you're making a dating profile, you need to stand next to people shorter and uglier than you. You don't want to be next to someone taller and more handsome. So if you start rolling out Barack Obama, it almost highlights how bad she is.
Yeah, that's right. You kind of need to like, you almost need him to step away so she can sink or swim on her own because,
That's literally why Joe Biden had picked her, was because she was the uglier, less good at this, even though he's an old senile man, which speaks to how bad she is at it, is that by comparison, you're like, oh yeah, the old senile guy's pretty competent. I mean, I was listening to that lady talk, and at least this guy's a man.
Yes. I mean, look, there is really something about this, like, and this is when you're asking yourself, how did Democratic politics get so stupid all of a sudden? Understand that a big part of that dynamic, not all of it, but a big part of it, is that Barack Obama picked Joe Biden to be his VP because he was so mediocre. He would never outshine Barack Obama. And then Barack Obama picked Kamala Harris.
You mean Joe Biden did?
I'm sorry, Joe Biden picked Kamala Harris for the same reasons. So she would never outshine him. And then Kamala Harris picked Walz for the same reason. So that he would, we're 2 election cycles away from a baby being the Democratic nominee. We're getting dangerously close to the territory where you just have a newborn out there. I mean, you just go, that's who I'm running with. So you guys better deal with me, because otherwise you got VP baby here to take it home. But yeah, anyway, that all of that does seem to be blowing up in their faces. It's been quite a wild thing to watch. Here, let me, by the way, I will periodically take questions from the chat. So if you guys have any, I'll jump into that. But yeah, if there's anything, also, if there's anything you guys want to talk about, a topic or something like that, feel free to bring it up. I will, before I check in on the chat, I do want to pull up, you could pull it up, Natalie, if you want to, the tweet. I sent it to you. But there was this Obama tweet that I don't know, I found this to be so hilarious that I had to play it on the show, or I had to show it on the show, I should say. But so Barack Obama posted this tweet today. He said, I often hear folks say, Donald Trump sent me a check during the pandemic. I want to make sure you understand this. Congress sent you a check. By the way, Joe Biden also sent you a check during the pandemic, just like I gave people relief during the Great Recession. The difference is that we didn't put our name on it because it wasn't about feeding our egos or advancing our politics. It was about helping people. So don't be giving him credit for that. And don't give him your vote either. There's only one candidate in this election who cares about you, and that's Kamala Harris. Now, if you could get past for a second the insanity of this tweet, just the absolute insanity to say, I want to make sure that you understand that Donald Trump didn't give you money. But just so you know, Joe Biden also gave you money, and I also gave you money. But the difference is that we don't brag about it. We don't point out that it was Joe Biden and it was me who gave you money. Like, the number of contradictions in that tweet. First, he contradicts himself when he says Trump didn't give you money, when he says Biden and I also gave you money. Because if you did it, then Trump did it too. It went through the same process that you went through. And then you can't say I gave you money and Joe Biden gave you money, but we never mentioned that we gave you money, because you just mentioned it. You just mentioned it. So now you are bragging about it. By definition, like, it's like he just contradicts himself all over the place. But here's something that's actually, and look, I've seen, this is not scientific. It's somewhat anecdotal, but I do feel compelled to say that this is a thing I've seen on like several man on the street interviews, and it is not a positive comment about the state of our society. But it's particularly true with people, let's say, lower on the socioeconomic ladder. This is a real thing. And the fact that Barack Obama posted it, I'm like, wow, their internal data must be showing that this is more of a real thing than even I knew. That people will go, I'm voting for Trump because he gave me a check. That is not something that any of us should feel good about. but this is a real thing that people got a check that said Trump at the top, and they were like, you know what? I just got money from Trump. I'm going to vote for that guy. And it's something, I can't even believe it because it's 4 years later, but it's something that people still bring up a lot. And the fact that Obama felt that his whole mission here has been getting out the black vote for Kamala Harris. And, you know, that includes lecturing black men about how sexist they are. But his whole thing here is to basically be like, no, that money didn't come from Trump. And like, whatever, Joe Biden gave you a check too, dude. So like, I gave you a check. You don't remember. It's like, there's something really sad. It's a sad state of affairs when that is actually the reality. The fact that Obama tweeted this really does seem to indicate that at least he believes there are a lot of people who are voting for Trump because they got a stimulus check from him.
All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Monetary Metals, an amazing company that is revolutionizing the precious metal space. And right now, you can unlock a 12% return on silver. But this is Monetary Metals' thing. It's not just owning precious metals. You're now owning precious metals that work for you, that pay you interest in those precious metals. So you can be a part of the first true silver bond since 1834, and you can earn 12% annual interest on silver paid in silver. So you're growing your total ounces over time. Now, you must be an accredited investor to participate. It's a 3-year term, and the bond is financing a publicly traded mining company located in the Western United States. Click the link in the episode description or head over to monetary-metals.com for more information on how to participate and to learn more about this company that, like I said, really is revolutionizing the precious metal space, and they're run by great people as well. So check them out, monetary-metals.com. All right, let's get back into the show.
So on both sides of this, let's first just start with the bragging about sending people free money. That's the entire game. That's why Obamacare existed. That's why Biden's been trying to get your student debt revoked. Supreme Court keeps saying that it's not constitutional, and he keeps doing it. They love giving you free stuff because it keeps them in office. And, you know, usually that's the Democrats' thing is, hey, we're going to send you free stuff. We're going to get you this. We're going to get you these entitlement programs. We're going to make sure your college is paid for. That's usually the Democrats' game. So, but in terms of bragging about the free money that came to you from government, every single time you get free money from government, it's a devil's deal. It's like eating cake. You get free cake and you start eating it. It doesn't taste delicious and it gives you hemorrhoids. So to speak to the government, specifically, here's an example: the $25,000 that Kamala Harris wants to give people so that they can buy their house. Do you think that's going to help anybody? Of course not. It drives up your house, and now you're more indebted. It literally did nothing for you. You just have a bigger debt bill that you'll have to pay. Same thing happened when they made funding available for colleges. Colleges went, oh look, we can charge more, and then you get stuck with more debt. But let's talk specifically about the Trump checks. Firstly, I think the money printing that happened during COVID quite clearly led to inflation. But aside from that, it was a bribe because they needed to bail out the banks again. And they knew that they couldn't just bail out the banks. And so they said, you know what? I guess this time we'll send everyone a check for $1,000. And you know what else that check for $1,000 allowed the government to do? To tell you that you can't go to work because don't worry, we're going to send you a check to your door. That was not, talk about not free money. They knew that the American people wouldn't allow for the banks to be bailed out and they wouldn't be compliant on the healthcare protocols of shutting down your business. So they took away your ability to work. They took away your freedoms. They locked you down and they bailed out the banks. And oh, wow, I had a check for $1,000 that then led to inflation a year later. That was a real win, that free check that you got.
That buried you, financially for years afterward. Look, well said, and you're obviously 100% right. Look, even if you just remove things down to their most basic level of like theory or the basic level of understanding, right? Just understand, government can't give you anything because it has nothing. The government doesn't have anything to give you. The government isn't like a factory that's producing widgets. If someone has a factory that's producing widgets, they could give you some widgets. We make them here. There's nothing like that in Washington, D.C., okay? They don't make anything. And so all they have is the ability to tax and the ability to print money and the ability to borrow money. But if anything, in order to give you money, if they tax you, they have to take it from you in order to give it to you. If they're printing money, as you pointed out, they're going to devalue the currency. And if they're borrowing money, it's just a promise to tax you in the future. or print the money in the future. So there's no way to do it without hurting you. But, you know, I would also, as you bring this up, I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday. And I think one thing to keep in mind, I know 2020 was 4 years ago, but it is important to keep in mind that as you point this out, so the government shut down the country, deemed tens of millions of workers non-essential, just decided your job isn't essential, and in a totally arbitrary way. And when I say that, like, yeah, no, it is an arbitrary value judgment to say that church is non-essential, but the liquor store is. That's not like, nobody should get to make that decision. And I'm not, you know, I say this as somebody who doesn't go to church and does enjoy a cocktail. So I'm not on team. But I also find the liquor store to be essential. That's not the point I'm making. I just want to be clear. But like, there were all types of, and so they lock down the country, and yes, then they do another round of banker bailouts. Now you got to remember, okay, I know I'm going into conspiracy territory a little bit here, but just hear me out. I'm not claiming anything with certainty, but I think this is something that's important to pay attention to. So when they bailed out the banks in 2008 and 2009, it led to huge protests. And there were two major protest movements. One was on the left and one was on the right. And they both started in protest of the banker bailouts. Of course, the one on the left was called Occupy Wall Street, and the one on the right was called the Tea Party. But what very few people ever focus on is the fact that both of them started for the same reasons. It was the bailouts of the banks. That's what they were both upset about. Now, obviously, one of them was more right-wing and one of them was more left-wing, so Occupy was a little bit more colored by, you know, left-wing views on economics. They would focus more on stuff like the profits of the big banks, and the right wing was talking more about government spending and debt and deficits and things like that. But they both started as a reaction. I mean, the Tea Party started from the Ron Paul campaigns, but then it was TARP really that got the thing going. And so they were both reactions against the bailout of the banks. And then you understand that in 2020, not only did they lock down the country, but then they bailed the banks out again. And in a different way this time, but a banker bailout nonetheless. And then, just keep this in mind, okay? Then, and I remember being aware of this. I remember talking to you about this, Rob, like when it first happened, before any of the protests. But when the George Floyd thing first happened, and I remember just seeing it everywhere. And also keep in mind, this is the height of lockdowns. Everyone's home, you know? Everybody was home. And every single media outlet decided to obsessively focus on George Floyd. And all I'm saying is that it was pretty clear. I remember talking to you about this at the time. It would go like, oh, they're picking this one. They've picked this one and they've decided we're going to make a huge thing out of this. Because just saying the George Floyd situation was, you know, it was pretty horrible what happened to that guy. But like, stuff like that does happen. It's a country of 330 million people. Cops rough a guy up and he ends up dying later. Like that happens. Okay. Now it was a particularly egregious one, but they also kind of picked that. And all I'm saying is that it very clearly seems like it was a real concerted effort to make sure that the protests that are inevitably on their way are going to be about this thing, not about this. That we're going to get you focused on this issue. And look, dude, there's some people who have done way deeper dives into this than I have, but if you follow the money and all of the fucking crazy things that were happening through the summer of love, where they were all, and Kamala Harris was in on this as well, they were bailing out the worst, most violent offenders to make sure they could be back on the street the next day for the next day's riots. There was, and look, even in that time, in Time magazine, where you had the Democratic operatives bragging about how easy it was for them to turn it off. And just think about that for a second. You know, there's been, in, the last 4 years, there have been several different, like, fairly high profile examples where, like, cops killed a black person, you know? Never led to protests like that. Never got the wall-to-wall coverage in the corporate media like the George Floyd one did. There has been no Black Lives Matter protests during Joe Biden's presidency. Isn't that convenient? Isn't that interesting? Like, did we solve that problem? Is police brutality not an issue anymore? Is the racist cops, are those not an issue anymore? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, it is just something to really look back on and be like, wow, I'm not saying there was no organic elements to the 2020 protests, but there were certainly inorganic elements to it as well. This was really pushed. And, I got to say, very intelligently, if you really think about it, because they really did suck all of the air out of the room with just, once that happened, it's like there was just going to be no more talk of banker bailouts or lockdowns or stuff like that. It's like people were protesting racism.
There were few opportunities to be outside and socialize where you didn't have to be afraid of COVID unless you were protesting George Floyd, which somehow protected you. So there really weren't that many.
Like, as Rob makes the joke, remember that this was real. That this is not, it sounds like, oh, Rob's just saying something ridiculous, but he's making fun of the fact that the actual groups of scientists in the middle of lockdowns got together to explain to you how it was okay to go outside now, as long as you were protesting racism, because racism was a virus too. And it was an even more dangerous virus than COVID. And like the whole apparatus that was locking down the country turned and said, but this is your one exception. You're allowed to do it if it's for George Floyd protests. Unbelievable. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Kalshi. Do you think you know who will win the presidential election? Do you know how many seats the Democrats or Republicans will win in the House or the Senate? Well, there's finally a legal way to bet on the outcome of these elections, and that is the platform known as Kalshi. Kalshi is the first legal exchange where you can trade and bet on any event, including but not limited to elections. Kalshi went to court and won legal approval for election betting for the first time in over 100 years. They have markets on who will win the presidential election, who will control the House and Senate, who will win swing states, and more. Kalshi is already being used by hundreds of thousands of people and has facilitated close to $1 billion worth of trades. Let's take an example. So right now, Trump and Kamala Harris, they're trading about 50-50. So if you bet on one, you're going to just about double your money. So if you think you know who's going to win the presidential election, that's an opportunity right there. Put your money where your mouth is. Give Kalshi a try. Sign up by using our link, kalshi.com/Dave. And the first 500 traders who deposit $100 will get a free $20 credit. That's Kalshi, KALSHI.com/Dave to get that $20 credit. Thank you, Kalshi, for sponsoring today's show. I hope you check them out. Let's get back into the show. I still say in all of my days, I've never seen anything as crazy as that. That one takes the cake. In terms of all of the times that a media narrative changed, and there's been some good ones. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, we just lived through a pretty amazing one where it went from literally not in a day, in 2 hours, it went from Joe Biden as sharp as a tack and you're a neo-Nazi if you say he's senile. And 2 hours later, they were like, we really do need to look for another candidate. You know what I mean? Like, that was a pretty crazy one. But nothing will ever top 3 months of you must live under house arrest or you're an awful person. Going to the beach is a crime. Taking your kids to a playground, having a funeral for your dad. No, you don't get to do that. You have to put all of that on hold. And then the next day going, nah, actually, it's totally cool to get together in large groups of hundreds of thousands of people. That's cool. You're allowed to do that. Go stand shoulder to shoulder. That's fine. Cough all over each other. No problem. It's cool. It's racism. And you're like, dude, you just demanded that I give up my entire life. It's just, I don't know. I've never seen anything like that. And I think that, I do think that, you mentioned the other day when we were doing a show together, not this podcast, but we were doing Dustin's show, the guy who owns the Comedy Club of Kansas City. And you were talking about just kind of the the attachment that we made with our audience during COVID, and I do think that more so than weapons of mass destruction or like any other major government lie that led to like a horrible policy, I do think that that did more damage to the credibility of the media and the scientific establishment and all of that. I think that did more damage to them than any other thing, because it was just too crazy. It was too crazy to figure out it was all bullshit, and they just stole months of your life from you. And so like, it was like, oh my God, they lied to me to steal. I mean, listen, again, this is not, I've talked to a lot of people and heard a lot of different stories about, you know, people's COVID experiences, but yeah, these people lost their family members and didn't go to the funeral. That's a fucking human rights violation on a profound level to make it a crime to have a funeral. I mean, like, if you really think about what a profound level that is, in the most like ancient nomadic tribal groups that archaeologists have found, literally one of the major characteristics that this is part of, it's not the entirety, but it's part of how they determine when Homo sapiens are considered Homo sapiens. You know what I mean? It's like there's like a few different activities that they start going like, at this point, 250,000 years ago or whatever, we think there were what is modern man. And one of them is doing rituals for their dead. Every single society that's ever existed has had their own different form of it. There's something deeply spiritual and psychological about it. To criminalize that, to rob that from people, is like a grotesque human rights violation.
On the plus side, my family over COVID started doing graveside funerals, which is like the tailgate party of funerals, and it cuts out the whole driving over, the elaborate long speeches. You get together, you get it done, and it's shorter, you know, less people, and so the one good thing from COVID, graveside funerals, I endorse that.
All right, you know, when you put it like that, I may have to walk back my previous comments. That actually does sound sane. All right, let me jump into some of the comments here. Mike Costa Show says Tom Wood's book was insane. LOL. Yes, it was excellent. It was a Diary of a Psychosis. If you want to relive the COVID insanity, it's the best book out there on it. I mean, it's amazing. It's infuriating. It's everything. And man, yeah, I mean, it's great, but it is furious. It's interesting watching all these people in the comments talking about like you got who found you know, us through COVID or found us through malice. All right, let me write Nadery Johnson. Maybe I shouldn't give full names when I do this.
That one's pretty generic.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think you're going to find a Johnson out there.
That's true. All right, I know you have a strong distaste for income tax and excessive taxation in general by the federal government. I tend to agree. How do you rectify that with the immense national debt that our government has? On one hand, the taxation is already out of control, and on the other, it seems like cutting spending alone won't be enough to rein in inflation. The debt needs paid. I guess it's a non-issue with the amount Republicans talk about it these days. Time to buy more gold and silver, I guess. Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you at the end there. It doesn't seem like anyone's going to do anything about it soon, but, you know, like I look at it like this, like, first of all, spending cuts can solve the problem. Like you can't, in fact, it's the only thing that could solve the problem. There's no conceivable way, and this is just numbers, like there's no conceivable way you could tax us to the point of, you could tax us to the point of paying off the debt. The only answer is cutting spending. And as far as the debt needing to be paid, I got to say, I don't agree with that. I take the old Rothbardian position. I think we should default on the debt. I've long held that view. I'm not for austerity. I'm not for paying off the debt. I'm for just walking away from it. And that will suck for people who are holding government debt. And it would be bad for our credit rating and all of that. But then the result of that would be like the same thing anybody does who just has way too much debt that they can't repay it. We're already bankrupt. We might as well admit that. And, you know, taxing is just robbing people. And just robbing people. You know, it's like, I mean, imagine, like, there's no difference economically or morally than if you just get a gun and go around and stick up all your neighbors. Just rob them. I mean, that's what taxes are. You're just taking people's stuff. And if you think that's a recipe for prosperity, you're going to have to explain that one to me. How can you go around taking everybody's stuff and that's supposed to make them richer? I don't think so. I think it's good for you. Like, I think it's a plan to make you richer, but I don't think it's a plan to make your community richer to go around and rob people and then brag that some of those crumbs make it back to them. You know, oh, I robbed you. Yeah, but I spent some money at the local general store. So, like, you know, it kind of went back into the economy. I don't think so. Okay, Dave, what do you think the odds are that all of the swing states go blue, but Trump is able to flip a couple of blue states, blue strongholds like Illinois? Very unlikely. You know, I mean, it's it's probably not impossible, but, you know, there are trends that are national trends. And if Donald Trump loses every one of the swing states, Donald Trump is losing this election, and he's losing it bad. Like, it's very hard to imagine a world where all of the swing states go blue, but some blue states end up going red. You get what I'm saying? Like, if Trump is having that bad of a night that he loses all the swing states, he is done. That's unfortunately just not going to work. Oh Lord. All right, a lot of people are asking about the Piers Morgan show from yesterday.
I saw a clip, and that was fiery, and you were throwing some bombshells at people. I mean, well, you know what? It was almost like when you watch like a real trained MMA guy with like 3 people attacking, and just like out of a movie, the way they flip one guy in the back and then take out the next guy, because it was chaotic, and you were just dismantling them.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I just so yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of questions about it, but what are your thoughts on your Piers Morgan appearance yesterday? I mean, you know, look, I'll be honest. My honest takeaway from it was I was like, I don't know if I should do the show anymore. And I don't mean that as like Piers has been nothing but cool to me, and it's a big show. It gets lots of views, and he's had me on there as a regular for a while now. But it's like he's building a thing where it's like the game is becoming to just like shout over everybody. And I don't know. I can't stand that. I was like, and, you know, weirdly, like the Destiny is just, I just feel so weird even referring to another man as Destiny. I don't know. He's just like the worst. I just think he's like an incredibly bizarre human being who's just one of the maybe the most disingenuous person like in this space. He's just like will say things he doesn't believe. He's an intensely dishonest person. I mean, intensely to the point that like Destiny's done shit like which I don't know much about the guy, but I know that one time he just made up that we were debating and just started a YouTube video and went Destiny versus Dave Smith live here. And I just found out because my Twitter starts blowing up and everyone's going, oh, you backed out of the debate. You pussed out. Because he went on air and said, Dave didn't show. Dave backed out of the debate in this video titled Dave Smith versus Destiny. Literally just made it all up. We never communicated about it. Never had anything scheduled. Never planned on it. No, you're just a liar. That's just who he will just lie through his fucking teeth. And he's also just this smarmy little wimp of a man. And I just can't stand him. But
it's a fun marketing trick. I should start doing that with Joe Biden, Kamala Harris.
I got to say, there was almost something I weirdly respected about it. But I was like, whatever. What a weirdo. But and of course, it's just intensely personally a very weird person, like a very bizarre person.
You green screen yourself into a debate hall, and you're like, Mark Cuban didn't show up, but I will still address this audience.
Yeah, it's something on that level. Now, Mehdi, I've never met him before, I don't believe. But so we started talking before the show. We actually had like a real interesting conversation. You know, I know he's a huge critic of Israel and he's anti-war in general, but we started talking and like he was telling me about how he reads antiwar.com all the time, and he's been following the site since Justin Raimondo was running it back in the day, and shout out to the late great Justin Raimondo. And so we had like an interesting conversation before the show. I thought he was kind of interesting. I didn't even know what we were going to talk about on the show. I was like, there might be some stuff where me and him are arguing against the other two, you know, like I wasn't sure. But as soon as it started, I mean, like, I don't know what to say. Both him and Destiny, their style and tactics of doing these shows, I find appalling. And not just like appalling. It's like I look at both of them and I go like, how do you not just feel terrible about yourself right now? I mean, they do this thing where they just try to. I mean, I'm not saying like, look, in any debate, yeah, people are going to step on each other's toes. You're going to be interruptions. There'll be some things like that. But you don't just do that the whole time and just literally try to not let anyone else get a word in. And every single time they talk, you're going to interrupt him. Dude, Mehdi was doing this thing. I mean, first up to Sarah Palin. Like, I don't like Sarah Palin. Never been a big fan of hers. I find her totally unimpressive. And I think John McCain, and this is really saying something, I think was the worst presidential candidate of my lifetime. And not like not like the way Kamala Harris is the worst. Like, I mean, in terms of like what he stood for was just the most evil candidate. But like, even just the way Mehdi was talking to her, you're like, Jesus, dude, like, it's just so uncomfortable. You're being such a shitty human being right now. And he would do this thing. I mean, dude, it's like, I don't know what to say. It reminds you of like, I don't know, like, you ever like argue with your drunk girlfriend when you were a senior in high school? And you're just arguing with like a drunk girl.
I mean,
it's
I
like
wasn't
talking
that cool,
to that.
but go 20 years later, then yes.
Yeah. Well, okay. So it's arguing with a drunk woman. I don't know what to say. Like, he would do this thing where he'll interrupt you with a question and then just keep asking the question. So the whole time you talk, there's no trying to get the answer out of you. It's just, I don't want to let the audience hear what you're saying. So I'll ask this question over and over. So, you know, like you'll start saying something and you'll be like, well, listen, Trump says this. You go like, did he lie about the insurrection though? Did he lie about the insurrection? Did he lie about the insurrection? Did he lie about the insurrection? Did he lie about, like, dude, are we fucking children here? Like, how do you, I don't understand how you can do this and look yourself in the mirror. Like, I like mixing it up. I like doing debates. I do a lot of debates. And the reason why I do very well in debates is because it's not that I'm so great or anything. It's just like I have a better argument than the other side. So I just happen to be in the camp of the people who are right about stuff. And I've read all the guys who are really super smart and were right about stuff. And sorry, I've read the stuff you've read too. And my guys have smarter arguments than yours. So like, I have a huge advantage in all of these debates because I'm just arguing the right side. Like, just to be clear, right? Like when I debated Chris Cuomo, the takeaway from that isn't that like I'm so much better at the art of debate than Chris Cuomo is. You know what I'm saying? The point is that I'm just on the right side. Like if we had to switch and he got to argue my side and I had to argue his side, he'd probably body me too. I don't know. This side is clearly right. But there's this weird thing where like when you're doing it, the game I'm playing is trying to present the best argument, you know, and like the game they're playing is trying to win every point while not letting you talk and interrupting you and being so cunty that you kind of like lose your cool. And I did kind of leave just being like, I don't think I want to do that. You know, like there's the way, like when I said before that, you know, like, look, there's gonna be in any debate, there's gonna be, I'm not saying like there's going to be some interrupting. There will be some talking over each other. And of course, there's always some performance element to it. There's always some like, you know, there's tactics in debates, and I'm not above using certain tactics. But the tactics are usually like, I'm trying to ask you questions until I find a contradiction in your argument, you know, and then I could point out the contradiction in your argument. I'm trying to reducto absurdum the point you're making to take it to its logical conclusion and prove how ridiculous it is, and then walk back to be like, well, look, it's still ridiculous when you argue for it like this. The tactic isn't just I'm going to go nah, 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 nah while you talk. Like, it's almost like I'm not complaining about fouls. Like, I used to play street ball all the time. It was my favorite thing to do when I was a kid. We'd just go play street ball after school, right? And when you play street basketball, it's always, you kind of call your own fouls, but it's rougher than playing like in an organized game of basketball. Like, people foul all the time. You're not calling little ticky-tack fouls. You got to be like hit really hard for you to call it. So like, I'm not against a debate like that. No, let's play street ball. Let's like, someone might talk over someone. We could be rough. We could even be insulting, all of that. But there's a difference between that and like if you go to play a pickup game of 3-on-3 basketball and immediately the defender just hugs you, just wraps their arms around you and tries to bear hug you. And you're like, oh, well, then I can't play basketball. Now we just have to fist fight. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, now it's a fight. It's not a game of basketball anymore. And I gotta say, there is like, watching the response to Piers Morgan yesterday was kind of fascinating to me, because there were like, I mean, you can go look on social media in the comments or anything. There's a ton of people who were like, Dave is the only adult in the room here, and Dave just dominated all of these guys. And then there were people who were like, oh, Dave got destroyed. Look, he was quiet here. He wasn't even saying anything. He was just laughing. And it's like, dude, what am I going to do? Scream over everybody so no one can hear anything? It's just, if that, I saw somebody on Twitter said they want to see Mehdi Hassan against the guy who's like the son of one of the Hamas guys who's pro-Israel. I can't remember his name, but he's another guy who's just literally, if you go watch his debates, he just insults you and then yells over you. And I was like, it was mind-boggling to me that anyone wants to see that debate. You want to see a debate with two people who will just scream over each other the entire time? Anyway, I guess I'm just kind of fine with being like, all right, I will take all of the intelligent people who looked at that and went, Dave was the adult in the room, and you guys can have all the people who just want to see a food fight of some sort. Like, okay, fair deal. But I don't know, like my value that I bring to these things is like, I go there and I'll make better points than everyone else is making. But if I'm not allowed to make my points, like if it's not even like, hey, I could get 3 sentences out without being interrupted, which I do not think I did once in that whole show, it does feel like maybe I don't need to do this. Like, I don't know. I might tell them that like I'm just not going to do the panels anymore. If they want to have me for like a one-on-one debate, I'll do that. But it's just like I got to say at the end of the show, and again, like I like him. It's not nothing against him. He's been a cool guy to me. But Piers Morgan, like as soon as the show stopped, he was like, "That was great, guys. Excellent." And I was like, really? Like, you thought that was excellent? I'm like embarrassed. Like, it's like, I also particularly, don't you hate, Rob? I mean, whenever there's like, you ever see like on a podcast or on a TV show, something where there's an argument where people just talk over each other? And I don't mean like for a second they talk over each other. Like that happens all the time. I mean like when you're just like, you're making the decision, I'm going to continue going with my thing. And you're like, no, I'm going to continue going with my thing. And we're just both going to talk. Clearly, nobody can hear what anybody's saying. And also, as the listener, I hate that. And I'm always so aware of it when it's happening on the show. I'm like, oh, dude, I would be like miserable listening to this right now. And it does seem to some degree that's what Piers is kind of trying to create. I guess it does very well in the numbers for him, but there's just a lot of that on his show. And that's just really not my deal. I don't know. Like, again, it's like the basketball thing. It's like, I don't know what to do. Now I think we should just fist fight. I don't know what to do with this fucking energy. And it's very, I don't know, maybe this is not the right thing to say, but I find it very feminine and very like passive aggressive. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm curious if any of you guys in the chat here because a bunch of you guys were asking about this, but tell me your feelings on it. I mean, like, I'm very open to getting feedback on this. Like, what did you think of the show? Do you think I should keep doing Piers Morgan's show? I mean, I think with, to me, it seems like with guys like that who are, and again, I'm not talking about like, oh, people who are like aggressive or might interrupt you a little bit. I'm talking about that shit. I'm talking about where Mehdi will just go, I'm going to keep asking this question until you're done talking. If you're doing that and I'm going to debate you, it has to be in some type of structured debate where it's like, you get a 5-minute opening, I get a 5-minute opening, you get a rebuttal, I get a rebuttal. Because otherwise, like, this is stupid. This is all really dumb. Like, you're not even getting to hear what I say. They would constantly do this thing. I mean, I called out Destiny for it a few times. I know I saw he tweeted it was a bloodbath. We destroyed those guys. And you're like, again, just like everything, he doesn't mean a word he says. But there were times where he would interrupt me after 3 words and just start responding to a thing that you're like, dude, you're just guessing what I was going to say and responding to that. But you guessed wrong. You got it completely wrong. That wasn't even what I was saying. And so I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel, but to me, that stuff is kind of seems like a waste of time.
All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Entera Skincare. Unlock the secret to youthful skin with Entera Skincare. It's a peptide revolution. In the quest for youthful, radiant skin, Entera Skincare unveils the secret ingredient, peptides. Their scientifically formulated product are infused with powerful peptides, the building blocks of skin's natural resilience. Peptides dive deep into your skin, stimulating collagen production, reducing wrinkles, and restoring firmness. Whether you're combating the early signs of aging or nurturing mature skin, Entera's peptide-rich formulas cater to all skin types. Experience the transformative power of peptides. With Entera, you're not just nourishing your skin, you're unlocking its youthful potential. Join the peptide revolution. Embrace the future of skincare with Entera. You can discover more by going to enteraskincare.com/problem and use the promo code PROBLEM for 10% off. That's enteraskincare.com/problem, promo code PROBLEM for 10% off. All right, let's get back into the show.
Mike Costa Show says you should debate Constantine or Destiny one-on-one on your show with Rob as proctor. With moderator, I guess. Is that proctor? Is that the word?
Proctologist? I've always wanted to do that.
All right, there you go. I'm in talks with Constantine's guys about setting that up. So hopefully we do that first. Chris says you were able to call those BS tactics out and make good points that non-biased watchers noticed and can be convinced of. Yeah, I mean, look, that's true, you know? But I guess it's just, you know, like the thing is that Piers Morgan does have a huge audience, and I'm still at a point in my career where, like, you know, I want to get in front of as many huge audiences as I can. It's how we grow this show, and it's how I get the shit that I want to say out to more people. It's just, it's a labor to have to do that for an hour and constantly be calling out the bullshit tactics and then attempting to squeeze in a thought. And then also, I guess there's just like, you know, there's a little bit of my own thing where it's like, and then when I finally get a thing out, then Piers has to, of course, like throw it to Sarah Palin, who's just going to say something dumb and useless. And it's like, no, that was all valuable time that could have been used saying anything. And then each of them is going to get their own time to like just say more nonsense. And I'm like, oh my God, just get to the point where I get. And then what happens is half the time, then when Piers finally comes to me, he asks me some question that I don't really give a shit about. And I'm like, oh, that's not even what I wanted to say. So I don't know. So that is Compound Skills writes Douglas Murray, Sam Harris, or Ben Shapiro. Those would be fun. Dude, I'll fucking, I'll do any one of those in a heartbeat. Like, I'll do any one of those. Douglas Murray, Sam Harris, or Ben Shapiro. Any one of those three, I'll debate them right now. You know what I mean? Like if right now Natalie had one of them that she could bring into the show, I'd be like, okay, let's do that. This will be the next 2 hours. I'll debate them. I don't need to prepare. I don't need to plan it. I will debate any one of those three guys anytime, anywhere. By the way, I mean, I'm exaggerating. I actually have to leave fairly soon and go pick my daughter up. But, you get the point. I would do it. All right, let's take a couple more questions here. Dave, you would have been better if you read Mehdi's How to Win Arguments book before the debate. Yeah, evidently. I don't know. I did not know that he wrote a book on how to win arguments, but I have heard that since yesterday's show. I do not. What does his book say? Just ask the same question. He goes, now, if you want to win an argument, you got to be like a 16-year-old girl about it, all right? You got to really just interrupt people. But you know what? By the way, you know what I'm saying? Like that, there is a thing, like you'll see it online, on online videos sometimes, like where it'll be like two like 16-year-old girls in the hood, like about to get in a fist fight. And they're like just talking to each other. And one of them's like, why you kiss my mans though? Why you kiss my mans though? Why you kiss my mans? And they just say it like on repeat over and over and over. And you're like, what are you? Now it kind of makes sense in a way when you're just trying to hype yourself up for a fist fight. You kind of get what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like I've seen that before in fight videos.
I kind of want to know why that lady kissed that guy's man though.
Well, look, I'm not saying it's not a fair question. I'm just saying you're probably not going to get an answer with this tactic. No, but you ever see like in a fist fight video, like sometimes I've seen it with guys too, where like they'll do something to kind of get themselves ready. Like it's not even really about talking shit. They're talking to themselves, and you'll see the guy being like, "You fucked my girl. You fucked my girl, though, dude. You fucked my girl." And it's like he's just getting himself ready to punch you. You know? Okay, maybe it makes sense in that situation, but like on a TV show where we're like debating ideas, it's just like the most bonkers thing ever. I mean, I remember literally sitting there watching him doing this to Sarah Palin, and I'm like looking at him. So I'm sitting here, he's next to me, Sarah Palin, and then Piers Morgan, and I'm looking at him, and then looking at Piers, and then looking at him, and then looking at Piers, and the whole time I'm like, Piers, you're not gonna try to jump in on this and just be like, hey, like let her. So what's the point of having a host here? If you're not just gonna, I mean, like whatever, give him his time to respond and fucking, he'll probably wreck her. Like I agree with him on a lot of shit that I disagree with her on, and like talk about foreign policy or anything, he's gonna fucking destroy her. But like, let her get her thing out at least, because the thing is, like, at least to me, the way I look at these like debates or these shows, it's almost like my attitude is like, I'd be stealing from myself if I did that. Like, I got to let you get your point out so then I can destroy your point because your point's stupid. So like, if I don't let you get your point out, then I don't get to destroy it. You know what I mean? But it's like, they don't really feel like they can destroy it maybe or something. I don't know. This is very, very bizarre. There's a whole different game, which I think at one point I actually said literally to Destiny on the show. I was like, you're playing a different game than me right now, and your game is stupid. All right. Jason writes, it was embarrassing for both of them. It wasn't a very constructive conversation, but I think the contrast between you and the other two made clear you were the only one there in good faith. And the audience probably saw that. Also, Sarah Palin was the most random addition of that panel. Yes, that was a bizarre.
Maybe Sarah Palin looks at the Kamala Harris run and sees that dumb bitches are making a comeback.
She goes, "Oh, dumb bitches are in again." I knew it. I knew we were going to. I knew we'd come back eventually. It's like all the, like people who have like pogs in their attic or something like that. And they're like, they're back. I got a whole attic full of them. All right, let me ask this. Matthew, thoughts on J.D. Vance saying he's coming around on Ron Paul's argument to end the Fed?
Ooh, I sent that clip the other day. That was a good clip.
Yeah. No, it was interesting. I mean, like he kind of like hedged a little bit. Like he was like, I'm not exactly a Ron Paulian, but Ron Paul does seem to be right when he talked about this thing with the Federal Reserve. And it's like, yeah, no, Ron Paul was right about everything. So that's a good, but I will say, I do think, I kind of mentioned this on the show yesterday, but there's no question that, with J.D. Vance and Vivek Ramaswamy and Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan and Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Elon Musk, like with that group, there is, it's not that they're all 100%ers or anything even close to that. Like none of them are like strict libertarians, but libertarian ideas are rattling around in all of their heads, and to, on some issues, they're like exceptionally good. And then, I mean, not, there's differences between all of them, with Vivek being probably the best. But that, just the fact, what was really interesting to me about that moment was that JD Vance offered Ron Paul. It's not like someone like said to him, like, how do you feel about that Ron Paul guy? Like, someone basically just talked about inflation. And then he was like, well, Ron Paul always said this, and I don't agree with him on everything, but I think he did make a good point about this. And that was just like, I just thought there was something that warmed my soul, that like the topic of monetary policy came up, and what the vice presidential candidate immediately thought of was Ron Paul. That to me is like, that's not nothing. And I know like libertarians get discouraged sometimes because it's like, we're losing. But that is, I think there's something pretty cool about that and kind of promising, and it's worth paying attention to and not ignoring that. So yeah, it's good. Anytime anyone brings up Ron Paul's name and mentions that he got something right, I think that's good. Here, let's do another question or two. Leo writes, exactly, Dave. Pierce is just trying to get sensational clips. He's scummy, in my opinion. Well, look, again, like I said, the guy's been a good guy to me, and I do feel a sense of like gratitude for people who put me on shows with big audiences. He is kind of the Jerry Springer of this world, and that's kind of what he's building. And that can be fun sometimes. I'm not like against that. There have been, I've done episodes of his show that I thought were really enjoyable, and I've watched episodes of the show that I really loved and thought were really good. The thing about it is that like, I just don't watch the ones that are shit shows. Like, I just have no interest in that. And so I watch the ones where there's like actually a debate on, or like I'll watch, like if he interviews John Mearsheimer or something like that, it's like, yeah, I'd love to watch that. But I just don't, I don't care about watching or participating in the shit show things. I find them, I just find them dumb. I don't know. Okay. Someone said I should start moderating Pierce's show. I like that. Mehdi Hassan being told, hope your beeper doesn't go off live on CNN was interesting. Yeah, I did see that. Did you see that?
Yeah, I thought it was, I didn't really even understand the conversation, nor did I understand the comment, but it seems like the news is just evolving into a big game of shouting, how dare you? And then going, oh, wow, we got our how dare you moment. And the guy even apologized.
Yeah, speaking of shit shows, that show on CNN that I just see clips from, it's like that's their version of the Jerry Springer show or whatever. They do like 6 panelists or something like that. It's like ridiculous. It should be against the law. There you hear me. I'm dropping all libertarianism for this. It should be illegal to have 6 panelists on a cable news show. Like, what are you doing?
It's really filling an hour with nothing. It's instead of us possibly having a dialogue about anything, let's all yell a talking point and get upset with each other.
And then it's just like, imagine there's 6 people there. You got commercial breaks, and then you're going to bring up like the most important topic in the world. The future of our country. You have 15 seconds. Go ahead, Rob. And you got to be like, it's in trouble. We should make it good. And they go, excellent point. Over to you. What do you know? But anyway, so the guy, Ryan, I know him. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I know him. He came out to the Gas Digital Studios to interview me like a decade ago. Maybe not a decade, 8 years ago, something like that. It was at Ralph's apartment. It was before we had the studio open on in Manhattan there. So as Ralph, when we first started Gas Digital, Ralph just made like one of the rooms in his apartment a podcast studio, and we just all broadcasted out of Ralph's house. He still misses those days. He'll tell you otherwise, but he loved it. He loved having all of us there. Yeah, he came out and interviewed me. I always liked that guy. And he's he's like a regular on that CNN show, and he's always being him versus the 5 other panelists or whatever. I don't know. You know, it was like the way I looked at it was I thought he kind of made a dumb joke. And like it popped into his head and he thought it was funny. So he said it. And then he apologized for saying it. He's like, nah, I didn't mean it like that. And then, of course, Mehdi Hassan, which is just like the slimiest thing ever. Then, of course, he always has to use these like woke leftist tactics. So it's like, did you just threaten to kill me on national television? You threatened to kill me. Do you want to kill me? Do you want to kill me? Do you want to? You know, of course, he does that. Just ask the question over it. It's just like, what? We're supposed to pretend this was like some major offense. Like, I'm as big a critic of Israel as anybody. He made a pager joke. I don't know. It's silly. The joke didn't really land. It wasn't the best joke, you know. It's just something came in his mind and he spit it out. We've all been there a time or two, Rob.
For a whole career.
So no. Rob's got some bangers. You guys are going to find out this weekend. All right, I do have to wrap up here because I got to run and go pick up my little girl. Thank you guys very much for all listening. Michael Malice tomorrow at 1 p.m. live on partoftheproblem.com. Catch you guys then. Make sure to check out Rob's comedy special. I'm sorry, Rob, you said Saturday or Sunday?
It's going to be Sunday, 8 p.m. Robbie the Fire, all one word. You can go subscribe to the channel now. You can check out Run Your Mouth. Get yourself ready. You can have a whole weekend. You can binge watch Run Your Mouth and get ready for the special.
First of all, everyone listening to the show, you should have already been subscribed to Rob's YouTube channel, but we will forgive it if you haven't. But go subscribe right now because I really am very excited for you guys to see Rob's comedy special. So Sunday, 8 p.m. on Rob's YouTube channel. And we're going to put some stuff up on our YouTube channel as well. So, all right. Catch you guys next time. Peace.